Great, thank you. We're going to open it up for questions. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask our panelists?
Be easy.
So I oftentimes think about what are the markets that you find that aren't represented as much as it comes to this exploration of inclusion in space cislunar movements, and which ones are you most excited about seeing more startups start to tackle?
I'll answer it this way. You know, there's the technical side of getting people to places, right? So we know how to engineer rockets. We know how to get to Mars. We've been getting to Mars since the 70s, right? But what we are struggling with is how do we get humans to live in microgravity when our bodies were designed for gravity, right? And then all of the changes that occur. Handful of years ago, we had the twin study in the space station. One went up for a year, one went down. They did a bunch of medical experiments to see how the DNA changed, if it changed, just everything, right? It's a fantastic read. I personally think that the technology revolving around medicine is an area that is, we're pushing really, really hard. I also think it's an area that draws significant benefits right back here on Earth in terms of, I'll just call it geriatrics, right? Medicine for geriatrics, chronic diseases, things of that nature, even pharmaceuticals, all of that. But the cognition side of the equation is extremely important for a couple of reasons, right? Because when you go up there, your fluids kind of change. Your cognition starts to kind of wane. You put, say, 6 people in a can, launch them off of a missile, literally, have them spend almost a year getting to Mars, right? And then getting there, trying to walk and trying to see, and then having to get them back. I don't know about you, but just taking a 3-hour family vacation in a Toyota Highlander, that's about all I can handle, right? I could use some real-time cognitive therapy doing that. So that side of the equation, I think I mentioned, the change management and innovation having a behavioral component to it. There's this behavioral side and medical side that we're really, really working with a lot of institutions across the U.S. to do that. So it's a great question because a lot of folks don't think about that, right? They think, yeah, let's just go to Mars, right? Build a bigger rocket, right? Put some kind of magnetic gravity pull vortex engine on it. Let's just go. It's like, well, we can get there, but it's like our species. We've got to find a way to evolve, right, so that we can live permanently. So in parallel, you'll see the engineering side of hard technical engineering, and you'll see the biomedical side, biomedical engineering. And then on top of that is, I'll call it cognitive engineering, right, medicine. So anyway, great question. Thank you for asking that.
I have a question over here. Thank you so much for everything that you all have been able to explain throughout this time. My name is Cesar de la Garza with Brownsville PUB. Just came back from San Antonio, so hearing you had your strategy in San Antonio and the talent that we're bringing back to the Valley, I can see that from over there. Hence my move back over here. But my question's more around the significant economical, social, and environmental impacts. Obviously, having SpaceX here, you get to see a lot of different opportunities starting to grow. So what would your advice be for young entrepreneurs in the Valley looking to take advantage of the opportunities, not just created by SpaceX, but other growing industries in the area?
I'll take a stab at that one. So, look at STEM fields. That's one. Obviously, whether it's engineering, what have you. But really, like for little kids, and I've heard this from different companies, the best thing they can do is just play with Legos. Play with Legos. I have to be careful how I say this one too, but there's actually an advantage to video games. Just don't overdo it. Because the motor skills that's required to play some of these very complex video games helps. But the other one is just hands-on with Legos. Push it up to teenagers and young adults. Work on cars. I use the F1 as an example. That's what these companies are looking for. Long are the days when I was, at UT, and it was ingrained in us to study, do this, which you still have to do. Now it's study and build something. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to set you apart from this stack of resumes to the smaller one and get you into not just a SpaceX, but all of these other companies that are requiring you to have a different set of skills aside from just that one engineering field that you're in.
And I would agree. So I'm going to answer this question a little bit differently, and I'm going to go a little informal and speak to my experience. So I'm a first-generation college student. My mom went to the 7th grade. Her family's from a Native American reservation out in Albuquerque. My dad, West Side, San Antonio, Las Palmas, graduated and went to the war. When we were growing up, right, we were parented by that generation. When we had big dreams, it was kind of like, hey, don't be stupid, right? Just put your head down and then go get a job, right? And I don't know how much of that is cultural or is just, my parents. I think they wanted the best for me. But I think at a young age, right, we are oftentimes not allowed to dream the crazy ideas and then to explore those things. And like Gilberto said, to get your hands on things. Like going to your Tio's garage and taking out his old lawnmower and just taking it apart to see how it works, right? And then trying to build a transformer with it, right? So, right, I think there's this area of, I'll call it intellectual free play, but I also challenge parents in this next generation to allow their kids to dream that way, right? And yeah, it may be a dumb idea, but when you do entrepreneurship, right, think about this rocket launching, coming down, and it's like, hey, guess what? We're going to catch it with chopsticks. That's a crazy idea. Guess what? It happened, right? So sometimes the most brilliant solutions come from those wild ideas. And I think if you map that unbridled intellectual curiosity, which is what Gilbert was alluding to, with the ability to experience and experiment, I would say what I would call a type of learning component that failure brings, right? So when we started doing this business model pivot, we had this thing we called fail fast, fail forward, fail into success, right? And it's one of the components that you see down the street where it's this rapid iteration of prototyping, launching, testing, coming back, getting the data and redoing it, right? So it's the same thing, but on a micro scale with your kids. Right? And then within that, there are a ton of STEM programs in this region. And I will say NASA is probably one of the best partners when it comes to that because it's taxpayer-funded money. We go out to space, we capture all this knowledge, we got all this technology. It's our job to capture it, publish it, package it, and put it back on the street so you can use it. It's your space program, right? So I'd have your kids, even at a young age, try that kind of stuff. And for my parents, it was foreign, some of the stuff that I was interested in. They're just like, man, that's a weird kid. Right? But they still love me, which is the other side of the equation is just being allowed to do that and go experiment. And I would say, if you think about a lot of our DNA, the things that our ancestors built, pyramids, right? Big aqueducts, all that, all this astrology, right? So I'm a trained architect. All that stuff is in us, right? It's in there, right? And so now we just got to be okay with kids saying they want to be something different and mapping into these programs, even outside of school, right? These innovation hubs programming here, bringing in, folks like me who really enjoy working with kids and just, saying, hey, would you give up a Saturday, Sunday? We'll buy you some tacos. Like, yeah, I'm there, man. So anyway, that's a long answer. You kind of hit on an area that I'm really passionate about because I see a lot of brilliant kids get squashed because of a legacy thought process about how you're supposed to be brought up, right? And we don't need to do that anymore. This region has changed, right? You still have some of that. That's that grit that we talked about, right? That's what the competitive advantage of this region from a human capital standpoint. That's it, man. It's like, if you ask me to build something with a team of folks, I'm coming down here, right? And I'm grabbing a team. grabbing a smart person too, but to help us. So anyway, long answer, man. I love talking about that subject, but yeah. Sorry, man. I went on.
All right.
Hey, I'm like,
My name's Eva Garcia. I am a regional transportation planner working for the RGV-MPO. And so I think, a lot of what you both have communicated today in terms of the community, the region, the culture, how we have that human capital infrastructure. I think I really credit BCIC for its investments in quality of life and the parks initiatives. I'm a huge supporter of that as a native. But a question for Mr. Salinas, Gilberto, it's related to transportation. So, obviously 2011 was the history you kind of initiated and the first domino fell. We're more than 10 years later, and we have significant transportation issues on SH4 leading to SpaceX and SH48 for different industrial reasons. So I'm trying to be proactive as a regional transportation planner. We're talking about the next decade. We're talking about, I love that the South Texas Space Commission and overall the Texas space idea. So knowing that we're growing, knowing that we're attracting more people to live and play in the region, what can we do as transportation professionals to be proactive for the industrial area in North Brownsville that you talked about, in other areas that we're seeing the job sector growth change? And I'm a disruptor. I like to believe I'm a disruptor in transportation. I believe in public transportation. So ultimately, I'd like to kind of hand it over to see what can we do better as regional transportation planners to prepare for the space and aerospace industry.
That's just planning for major investment in infrastructure. So short answer, there's a lot of effort right now in upgrading Boca Chica or State Highway 4 going down to the Boca Chica Beach site. So has been worked on, and it's continuing to, a lot of efforts going into that with several local and regional entities. So it just can't happen fast enough. That project just grew faster than all of us thought. And that's, you got the heavy truck traffic. It's a state highway, but that's in addition to all the tourists. I mean, that's the difference between us and like Cape Canaveral. Cape Canaveral, you're still 10 miles out before you can actually touch a rocket. Here, you just put your hand out the window, you can touch it, right?
Literally.
Or stand on a sand dune and, just see it right there. So, there's work being done with that. Now, taking a step back and looking at, my wife is from Houston, so we still go to Houston, not as much as we used to, back in the late 90s. And I remember there was Beltway 8, if you're not familiar with Houston, that's, their third loop. There's now another loop after that. Yeah. So Beltway 8, and I remember when they built it, that was back then, I was like, man, these planners in this city are not that smart. There's nothing out there. There was absolutely nothing. Now, it's
right. Highway 99
filled in.
Yeah.
And now you got another loop, Highway 99. Right. So you're talking about 20-some years later, right? So that's where we're at right now. What we could do better is from a community standpoint and leadership standpoint, not to be short-sighted. Looking 20, 30 years out, kind of like what Houston did with that Beltway 8 example. Being able to plan for those. And that's happening already, but again, just not fast enough. And then we start getting into the political side. Well, we need funding for that. That also can't happen fast enough. We're just not as big as a Houston or a Dallas that gets a lion's share. So that's what we're working on. What was the other part of the question? Or was that it on the transportation side?
I think like innovative perspective, like a scenario has
Yeah.
public transportation. Obviously, we're thinking about the RG as a metro area.
Yeah.
So how do we improve transportation?
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back to the planning. At the end of the day, it goes back to funding, having the political clout to give us the funding that we need, and having, not that we do not have good connectivity, but better connectivity between the Brownsville and the McAllen, really increasing that, and beyond that as well. Because now, suddenly, the Boca Chica Beach area, as well as South Padre Island, have become huge hotspots where it's not growing organically anymore like it was. Now it's just on steroids. So we're just having to catch up with that.
Yeah. I'll add just a little bit to it, not to that depth. So one of my first projects out of college was doing the land use case study for the Disney Aulani Resort on Oahu, Honolulu, if anybody's been to the Disney Resort. So we kind of laid everything out for the state and just kind of showed them how when they brought in a resort, which at the time they were talking to a different couple of folks, how they could show them kind of like a shopping center, how they could anchor certain assets and build that. From an urban planning perspective, when I was the master planner at the Johnson Space Center, one of the things that we always did is we knew we weren't the decision makers. It was our job to continuously communicate to the decision makers, provide scenario planning components with really simple, strong visuals, right? Because oftentimes as a planner, you're in the weeds, you're talking about all these components, all the way down to soil samples, right? And as a decision maker, you know, they're looking at some higher level things. So, you know, understanding that one of the roles is to kind of lead your leaders, so to speak, by constantly refreshing things, giving them a good data set to work from so that when the politics are right, they can just go grab that right and they're informed in the loop. If I'm a leader and I'm responsible for that kind of stuff, if I don't know until the last minute, then, you know, it's not good. There's a philosophy of when's the best time to plant a shade tree. It was 15 years ago, right? But oftentimes you don't get the sapling until, you know, 10 years later. But at least you know where you're going to put it. You understand what the sun is going to do, you know, how in a couple of years it's going to grow and what it's going to do to your grass and all that. So, you know, just kind of my perspective was I always viewed my role as that side of the equation. And then it helped me, because it can be frustrating because on the master planning side, we're looking, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years out. There's some things that you need to do immediately. But if you kind of reframe, you know, what your work is and how you support your leadership team like Gilberto and all that, I think that's a good way to approach it. You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Alicia Villarreal. I'm a real estate broker locally here in Brownsville. And my question, of course, is related to real estate. With a SpaceX driving innovation and growth in the Brownsville area, how soon do you think we will start seeing a significant impact on the real estate? And I'm talking about residential and rental. Do you think that Brownsville is prepared for the growing already with what is happening and that in the housing market?
Not entirely prepared. It's one of those things where we can't build houses fast enough as well. Again, we're a city that's organically grown over the years to now it's like we have to keep up. And we've already heard it from my leadership telling us that, hey, you know, people are complaining that their valuations are going up. They're paying more in taxes, to which my response is, well, their house is valued more, you know? That's not a bad thing either, right? They can make a lot of money if they sell it. And when it comes to rentals, you're starting to see a lot of apartment complexes being built out there because of what's happening down here. And these are investors that are coming in from other parts of the United States, as well as Mexican investment. And I know, and again, I can't speak on behalf of SpaceX, but I know that they have, you know, a waiting list of people that are just looking for housing. And geographically, what's interesting is to get to SpaceX, unless you're on the hovercraft, right? To get to SpaceX, there's only one way to get there, and you have to go to Brownsville. And like from my office right here, I'm a quarter of a mile away from the river. To get to a SpaceX, it's 45 minutes up to an hour sometimes, just because you have to cross town, right? So the closest you can be is on the eastern part of town. So that's where you're starting to see a lot of activity out there as well. So there's some SpaceXers that live as far away as Harlingen. Harlingen is starting to see that impact or that effect as well. So not so great news. Valuation that I expect are going to continue to go up slightly more. And that's not a super bad thing. But that means there's entrepreneurs in here, right? This is what this is. That means there's opportunities out there. He just mentioned like 3-4 business ideas, right? You know, a little while ago. On the real estate side, I mean, if I had some kind of money, I would be putting money into real estate in Brownsville and the surrounding areas. That was a softball for the entrepreneurs in here.
And we have one final question.
Hi, Blanca Davila with UTRGV. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your Insights Unplugged. In terms of workforce development, you've touched on entrepreneurship, transportation, and the real estate market. What type of recommendations would you have for higher ed institutions locally here, like UTRGV, to capitalize on upskilling and reskilling our local workforce to ensure that they tap into the space industry?
Thank you, Blanca. The university's already doing that, and that started way back when. The Stargate, Project Stargate, Dr. Janae was a huge part of that, Dr. Julia Garcia, and making sure that there was obviously I'm a Longhorn, right? That there was a UT flag planted out at in proximity to the SpaceX site, to start building that relationship between private sector industry, which in this case was space, and higher education, which was UT Brownsville at the time, now UTRGV. That facility is still there. Now it's engulfed by the SpaceX. So there's a pipeline there already. If anything more needs to be done, it's just increasing your capacity. Maybe on the transportation side, making it a little easier for some of our students to have access, whether it's out there or students from here going to the Upper Valley or vice versa. So that's happening already. The school districts, I'd say, I'm going to meet with BISD later today, right? But, BISD is not the only school district in the immediate area. We're definitely, and I'm sure that, companies here would be open to other school districts, not just in Cameron County, but the Upper Valley as well, starting that process early on. So I think UTRGV doing a great job. This facility, the partnership with BCIC is also a testament to that. But now looking at how to take it to the next level. And again, I have to be careful what I say, right, because of what we do. But there's other universities that are looking at the Valley because of what we have going on here. Linda, take it easy. There's other universities that are looking to come into the area, right? So we have to be mindful about that, and that's not a bad thing either,
Definitely not a bad thing. We love competition, so go for it.